Okay, here we are again, back to a virtual tasting. It's been a little while since we did an all virtual tasting. Um, I actually like it with this kind of tasting that we're doing tonight because one, I'm going to share with you some pictures and some videos, a map as well. And when I have a group in the shop or a group in another location and I'm trying to talk to everybody online as well, it can be really challenging. So we are going to continue to do probably virtual tastings for this Scotland series. And then when we get back into maybe some bourbon and other whiskeys, we'll do hybrid, both virtual and in person. But when it comes to sharing things online, this is a much easier and better format, I think, for everybody. And as we get into the fall and the winter, we got to get ready for the calendar and also just not being able to get out as easily as well. And so we probably will do more virtual tastings over the next, I'm going to say 6 or 7 months until we get back to spring again. But welcome everybody to tasting number 139 of the Saratoga Whiskey Club. We keep moving along here with our tastings. I was earlier in the year thinking we might get to 150 by the end of the year, but there's no way that is happening. That's fine. And actually, to tell you the truth, in the next few months, it's probably going to be one tasting a month. Maybe I'll squeeze in two, but that will probably be pretty hard with everything else that we have going on in the shop and also with travels and everything else. But we are doing a really fun tasting tonight. This tasting is a kind of recap or area tasting, the first part of a recent trip that I did. Actually, everybody is online with us who was on that trip, which is kind of fun. But this was a special coastal trip that I just did in the end of July, early August. And I'm going to kind of take you on that trip. I did realize after I picked the whiskeys for this that one of the distilleries was not the distillery I thought it was. So we are kind of jumping around in the map a tiny bit, and I apologize for that. I'll make up for it with the next series and get back to where we should be. But I got two distilleries mixed up in my head. I'll get to that when we get to the whiskey, but it's kind of funny. I just actually realized that in the last couple of days, and I'm like, well, too late for that. We're going to go a little bit off the beaten path with one of these distilleries. But so how I'm going to do tonight's tasting, everybody can chime in, use the chat room, tasting notes, whatever you want. This will be a really kind of fun, informal tasting, and ask away with questions and stuff like that. But I'm going to share a map with you to start, to just kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about in terms of where we're tasting these whiskeys from, and kind of go over the beginning part of our journey. So hopefully I can do this here. It's been a little while since we've been sharing screens. All right, there we go. Let me pull up this map here. Everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. There's a really great map. I just found it on online. It's, what was the website? I can't remember now. I downloaded it, but it was made in 2022. And it's a PDF that you can download and blow up and make as big or small as you want. But it lists all the distilleries. And it's really nice. I think it's a really, really nice looking map. But, there's a lot of these posters and stuff that you can buy and you can barely see anything. And when you can blow it up with a PDF, it makes it a lot easier. But all right, so here's Scotland. We all kind of know that Scotland is on the northern part of the UK. Actually, it looks like it's an island on this map. They've actually cut the the British part, the UK off of it there. But here we have Glasgow and Edinburgh right in the middle of in the map here. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but and then as we travel, so this trip we started in Edinburgh down here, and we worked our way to begin with. We went to Aberdeen, which is up here on the east coast, about halfway up the Highlands, or at least the main Highlands there. And then you can see that dotted line off the coast of Aberdeen. There's a ferry that goes all the way up. And we took this ferry. It's quite a long ferry, about 6 hours, all the way up to Orkney. And Orkney is at the very top of Scotland. Well, not the very, very top, but it's up there. The Shetland Islands are still further north of Orkney. But we spent our first 3 nights. It was really nice to have that much time in Orkney. On my last trip there, we only had literally 2 nights and really 1 full day. So it was nice to have 2 full days in Orkney. It's really a beautiful place, very remote. Basically, you feel like you're, you know, on another planet in a way. It's super remote, very grassy, no trees, just you know, a lot of heather and fields and cows and sheep and all of that good stuff. But there are 2 distilleries on Orkney. There is actually one distillery that's further north of both Scapa and Highland Park, which are the 2 distilleries on Orkney. And I didn't realize this, but there's a distillery now called Kimbland, Kimbland, which is 22 miles north of Orkney. So that is now the northernmost whiskey distillery in Scotland. However, we didn't get that far north. I don't know if it's not even on this map yet. But we did go to both Scapa and Highland Park, and we're going to start with Scapa tonight, and we're going to end with Highland Park, because Highland Park's the strongest whiskey of the night, and probably the best one to end with as well. But so we're going to go to Scapa first. That's going to be our first whiskey tonight. I'll read a little bit about the distillery first. I'm going to show you some pictures as well. But let me read about the distillery first. It's right on the shore of the Scapa Flow, which you'll see some pictures of in a second here. But the Scapa Flow was a very, very important body of water, a protected body of water on the Orkney Islands that goes way back in history as an important thing for both the Vikings back in the day, and then also during the 20th century with both world wars that happened. It was one of those areas in England at the time that was pretty far away from the German airfields, so they would base a lot of the British warships up in Scapa that were pretty well protected, and it's a very deep harbor. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, natural harbor, protected natural harbor. I guess Sydney also claims to be that as well. But from what I read online, it's about 200 feet deep with a sandy bottom. So plenty deep enough for many, many ships that would be based there. So it's a very important historical location, and Scapa, the distillery, is right on that Scapa Flow. Which is really cool because you can actually see some sunken ships. You can see some wreckage out there. But the distillery itself was founded in 1885 by a Glasgow blender. In 1919, it was almost destroyed by fire, but was saved by nearby sailors of the remaining Grand Fleet that formed a human chain carrying buckets of seawater to extinguish the fire, which is pretty cool. And then in 1954, they were acquired by Hiram Walker and Sons, which is part of Pernod Ricard. And the distillery was refurbished in 1978. But then in 94, it was mothballed. And it really wasn't until 2005 that production recommenced again. And in 2015, the visitor center was open. So really only in the last 8 years have you been able to really kind of go visit Scapa, the distillery itself. It's really a funky place. But before I show you pictures, let me talk about this first whiskey, and we can start drinking this first whiskey. So when we were there, we did a tasting, and you'll see some of the pictures from that. But one of the bottles that we tasted was what we have here in front of us, which is a distillery exclusive bottling from Scapa. It is a 12-year-old whiskey that is, let me make sure nobody's trying to get in here. Yeah, we're good. It's a 12-year-old whiskey that was in first fill American oak for 12 years. So we're talking bourbon barrel. This one is 48.2% ABV, so not too high. There were 1,998 bottles, and it was bottled in April of last year. So it's been around for a little bit. You know, it was one of those whiskeys that I wasn't too sure if I wanted to purchase it, but once I tasted it, I was like, heck yeah, this is a great whiskey. Nice to have a distillery exclusive that's large enough that it's going to last for a little bit and more people can try it. But yeah, cheers everybody. Here's to whiskey number 1 of this Scotland adventure. Hope you enjoy this one. Scapa has a little bit of kind of a funkiness to it. You'll see with their stills, even though I don't remember how many pictures I have of that, but they have a very unusual shaped still. And let me start up by pulling up some of these pictures. So this is kind of the entrance to the visitor center that we went in. I'm going to move some of my chat room around here so I can access things. So we did a little, before we went into the distillery, we did a little side walk, saw some cows out the corner of my eye. I wanted to see what was over there. But around the bend of the distillery is this, there's the Scapa flow. So you can see the entrance, or not the entrance, actually, that's just a part of the Scapa flow that's coming in there. Really, really beautiful area. Little bigger picture there. You can see the cows right up against the distillery pretty much. But we started off actually in the warehouse. So he took us to the warehouse. I don't know if this is actually going to happen or not. Let's see here. There we go. So they have multiple warehouses on the facility. Not all the whiskey is stored in one location, but this is kind of where we started our tour. He actually pulled some from a barrel in there that we did try back in the tasting room, which was fairly good. And then we went on this really incredible journey to a really incredible new tasting room that they set up overlooking the Scapa flow. I mean, I don't know if I've been to a more beautiful spot in terms of a tasting room. This kind of rivals Japan and Kanoski when you walked into their tasting room and saw the southeastern China Sea and just the beautiful beautiful water. Almost reminded me of Napa Valley. One of the main reasons we were built here. But you can kind of see that's the classic. Most distilleries in Scotland have the big name, but there's the tasting room. Pretty cool. What do you guys think of this whiskey?
I'm a big Scapa fan, always have been. The funk is what gets me, and this is a good way to start. I mean, I'm getting pears, honey, little citrus notes. I just love Scapa. I mean, I actually still have a bottle from before the distillery closed, and it's a 14-year-old.
Yeah, this really has some beautiful sweetness to it. I get like a lot of pear notes, kind of orchard fruit notes.
Mm-hmm. And it's got a little spice on the finish, but just a nice touch of it. A good finish.
So this was our little tasting kit. you can see the bottle actually right in front of you, the 12-year. That's what we're tasting tonight. But they have this really nice little tasting kit. I was gonna have you guys pick those up today, but I ran out of boxes, so I'm sorry about that. But you know, maybe next time when the club is real, the real deal. But that's our tasting kit there. And then we went outside for the last dram. Did it outside in front of the famous sign there. Shalom, we took pictures of the distillery, right? We did that after this, right?
I don't know. Let me take a look. I'll check my photos here. I mean,
Yeah.
the photos that my head is on is in that tasting room.
There's our group there.
I'm right in that section of my photos.
Yeah.
We
so
have some pictures of the distillery, Charles, if you.
Yeah, no, I do. I just have
Okay.
I'm gonna stop the screen share for a second here. I thought I had them saved in that album. I guess not.
I've got some pictures of um
I got
I've
it.
got pictures of the warehouse if you need them. Okay.
Hey, Shalom. So that ceiling is absolutely beautiful. I'm assuming that's supposed to look like a hull of a Viking ship.
Yep. Yeah, it was really impressive when you walk into the room and you've got all these, it's just all this glass around you looking out over the Scapa flow, and then you look up and see this, it's like you're, yeah, in the hull of a Viking ship. It's pretty cool.
Oh, you know what it was? I think what happened is we were gonna do a distillery tour after our tasting, and he told us so much as we kind of walked through the distillery that I didn't think to take pictures at the time.
I've got some pictures of the warehouse if you want.
Yeah, no, I have warehouse as well, but all right, so you're not going to actually see the stills today. I can probably pull them up on Google. Let me see here, because I do want to show you the look of one of them. It's really pretty wild. Here, let me see here. Oh yeah, here we go. All right, I'm going to share this here. Yeah, this has got them all. Well, I'm just going to share this and see if you guys can see it. But, so here's some pictures. It's a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to try and move this chat room here. Let me pull up this one here, Flickr. So if you look at this still in the back, it's got a cap on it. So most stills that we see, you know, are the typical, you know, copper pot that goes up and then the line arm comes right off, you know, it turns at an angle and then it either goes up or down and then goes in the condenser. Well, this one, it actually has a flat top to it, which is really kind of bizarre. And the line arm, like literally just comes right out of that top. And so what happens is when you, and this is really what makes, you know, all whiskey different. When whiskey, when the vapors hit that top part, that flat part, it'll just kind of drop back into the spirit, into the bubbling alcohol. And it takes a while for that vapor to get out because it's just hitting that ceiling and dropping back down in. So that's where you get some of that oiliness out of Scapa. It's all of these little nuances with the shapes of the stills are really what make, the whiskey different in each region, and in all these distilleries. I mean, if you look over here, I mean, it's just such an unusual shape. You very rarely ever see anything like that. It looks like it's out of a steamship, it's like a smokestack that gets cut off or something like that. But pretty cool, pretty wild. But yeah, that tasting room is pretty amazing. It's a sight to be seen for sure. Let me get back to that album here. And we were lucky. It was just recently opened. That tasting room literally opened a couple of months ago. And, I saw it in a magazine and they were featuring it. And I was like, oh my God, we got to go there. It's so beautiful compared to what it was before. Before, you would just go into the little visitor center tasting room and it was really nothing. You had no view, no nothing.
Are those the original stills then, or was that post mothballing?
No, those are the original stills. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. They go pretty far back. I don't know if it says here in my notes.
I'm in the car, Charles. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm running
Yeah.
behind.
We can hear you.
But I'm also Charles too on so we're both Charles. The Lohman still is kind of like the original concept of a hybrid of like a column on top of a pot. And there's no plates in it now, but yeah, it's there. I think it's one of only two functioning that Lohman still, so it's pretty special. It's pretty special still.
Yeah, and Scapa has released over the years a 12-year, a 14-year, and a 16-year. Even though the 16-year was discontinued in 2016, the 14-year did really well, won a lot of awards, but it's really almost impossible to find those any longer. They basically aren't doing a lot of sales of that anymore. However, we were told that later this year, Pernod Ricard is going to be releasing a 12-year Scapa again. So maybe we'll be able to get that at some point in the shop. But it would be nice, besides the Gordon MacPhail independent bottling of Scapa that we had, to have an actual Scapa from the distillery. I think it's going to be a really interesting time for Scapa. Highland Park has always been the main distillery in Orkney, the one that most people know. Scapa has always been the underdog, and but with this whole new rebranding and kind of with this new tasting room and experience, I'm curious to see what happens. This could be the start of a real transformation for Scapa, which would be pretty cool, I think. But it could be cool, and it might be tragic too. We'll see. But I think I have hope. We tasted a number of single casks at that tasting, and they were all really, really good. I did buy another bottle as well that I bought for myself. I did buy one Scapa for myself. But yeah, so that's our Scapa journey. You guys like that one?
Yep.
I haven't been able to look at the chat room. Oh, I see Charles is typing in the chat room.
Yeah, that was a really nice starting dram.
Yeah, pretty good.
Lots of stuff going on with that.
Okay, let's go back to the map real quick here. So Scapa and Highland Park, those are those two little white dots on Orkney. And then when you leave Orkney, well, there's many ways you can go to Orkney. One is you can fly. So some people fly, and then you can take the ferry, bring your car. But one of the probably most common ways to get to Orkney is this ferry right here from Thurso to Stromness or Stromness to Thurso. It's the quickest way to do it. And on a nice day, when you're passing this island, which is called Hoy, you really have some remarkable views of the cliffs of Hoy, the Old Man of Hoy, which is a rock formation. On our trip this last time, we had some decent weather right when we got on the ferry, and for a little while, and then the fog kind of came in, and before you knew it, it was pretty hard to see Hoy. You could still see it a little bit, but it wasn't clear. When I was there in 2019 with Holly and Matt, we had a really beautiful day going in. So that was fun. So it's a really beautiful area. But then you get to Thurso, and Thurso is where Wolfburn is. So some of you have had Wolfburn. There's actually a new 10-year Wolfburn out that I really want to taste. I saw it and I didn't taste it when I was there, which was a bummer. But then there's also, so there's a lot of different things going on now in that area. There's a distillery now that actually is to the west of Wolfburn that's called North Point. And North Point is now the new highest on the mainland of Scotland distillery. So North Point is further north than Wolfburn. And then you also have this other distillery over here called Eight Doors, which is in John O'Groats. And Eight Doors is a newer distillery as well. So there's quite a bit going on. You know, Wolfburn isn't that old to begin with, but then you have these other distilleries that are now making whiskey up here too. So it's becoming an interesting area to go visit. And then you have Wick, which is right here, and that's where Old Pulteney is. So a lot of you have heard of Old Pulteney. So all of those are really on the very northern tip of the Highlands. And then you work your way down the coast a little bit. Beautiful, beautiful drive along the coast, and you get to Brora. And Brora is where our next distillery is located, which is Clynelish. Definitely one of my favorite distilleries. I've always loved the 14-year. I've always thought the Clynelish 14 was fantastic for what it was. Definitely an underrated whiskey when you're out at a bar and you see Clynelish 14. It's usually one of the more reasonable drams that people have never heard of. But it's so good. And then all of the different independent bottlings of Clynelish, which are really, really fantastic. But Clynelish, and I'll show you some pictures of Clynelish, but we'll talk a little bit about the distillery and this whiskey. So it is near Brora. Original Clynelish was built in 1819, which was next to where the present distillery is right now, which was built in 1967. They first started distilling way back in 1820. So very, very old distillery. They expanded in 1896. And then in the 1960s, Clynelish really became known more for going into blends. And that's when actually blends were doing really, really well. And in 1967, they actually upped their production to keep up with the demand. And they built the current distillery that there is now. So 1967 is when the new distillery was built. So then you have these two distilleries that were side by side next to each other, and they were called Clynelish A and Clynelish B, to make sure that they wanted to make sure that there was a consistency there as well. However, in years shortly thereafter, Kalila was faced a pretty big drought and was closed for a year. And Johnny Walker was missing their peated whiskey in the blends, and they needed something to use in its place. So Clynelish reopened the original distillery, Clynelish A, in May of 1969 under the name of Brora. and a lot of you have heard of Brora. It's one of those very sought after distilleries that closed. However, it's now reopened, but one of those very, very expensive sought after closed distilleries. But Brora started making Brora whiskey in 1969. The ppm levels were around 30 to 35 ppm, which is similar to Kalila. Again, this was mainly used for Johnny Walker. So they went into blends for a year while Kalila was closed, and then they continued to make the whiskey as a single malt and ran until July of 1983. And then in 1983, they closed. And then it has become, one of the most rare whiskeys to get your hands on. Let's see here. Brora reopened recently, and is now making whiskey. You can actually go and visit if you have a really special opportunity. It's not cheap to do it, but none of their new whiskey has been aged long enough at this point to taste it. But about 95% of the spirit made at Clynelish is used in Johnny Walker. So almost all of the whiskey from Clynelish is put into Johnny Walker. Most of it is in the gold label reserve. And when you go to Clynelish, which I'll show you some pictures now, it is owned by Diageo, and Diageo is part of the Classic Malts family. You can tell that Diageo is really pushing for a new kind of experience. A lot of it based on Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is still, such a popular whiskey around the world. Diageo makes so much money off of Johnny Walker, it's ridiculous. We did go to the Johnny Walker experience in Edinburgh, which is pretty amazing, I have to say. And it just shows you the power of Johnny Walker and what Diageo is leaning on with that. Let me just show you some pictures. But this bottle itself, this is a really special bottle, and we can taste this while we look through some of the pictures. So we did do a hand fill of this bottle. Actually, I can probably go right to that. Let me see here. I have a video of me filling this bottle. Let's do that first. All right, it's pretty goofy, so bear with me. This is what we're tasting tonight. So Diageo has these hand fills now at each of their locations, which is pretty amazing. I heard that there's even one at Lagavulin now. So to be able to fill your own bottle of some of these distilleries is pretty special. We actually, Shalom and I filled bottles at Clynelish, Talisker, and Oban on this trip. And to be able to do that is pretty great. But what we're drinking tonight is a 12-year hand fill from Clynelish. This is 57.5% ABV. I bottled this myself. There's not much else on here, but you can tell just by the color that it's a bourbon hogshead. Very light color. I have not tasted this yet, so I'm pretty excited to try this.
It's fantastic.
You're gonna like it.
It is awesome, spicy on the front. On the nose, you're getting heather, honey, which continues to the palate. I like that nice spice that kind of mellows out throughout. So I think it's well balanced, really awesome.
This is all that's left in the bottle. I don't know if you guys can see that. So just a dram. And what that means is that when I go back to Scotland with Dave and Diane and Shalom, I am going back. I'm going to fill another bottle, damn it.
You have to bring that bottle back with you to refill it?
No, that'd be pretty funny, actually.
And 5 cents back if you do that.
Yeah, you get your recycling fee.
It was very interesting. It looked like they didn't really trust you and anybody else to turn off the tap when the bottle was full. So it looked like there was a side tube that held the 70 centiliters or whatever.
Yeah,
And you
so
were draining from that.
when you pull the knob up, it fills that tube. And then when you pull the knob down, it fills the bottle. And then what we found out, though, we found out too late. If you keep pulling that tab down, you get drops, and it will go forever. If you do that. Now they're watching you. Yeah,
when I did it at Talisker, I made sure I got every last drop. And it opened.
So you can see there's the Johnny Walker statue.
We'll give you a hand for.
So yeah, if you see that tube, I had already filled that tube up top. Pushing it down just emptied that tube.
Uh-huh. This is amazing. I love this. Again, we started with two of my favorite whiskeys.
But then if you keep doing that, lifting that up and pushing it back down, you will get a little bit more. But when you go to the distillery and do a tour, they make it an experience at Diageo distilleries, or at Johnny Walker distilleries now. We went into this room that had a table that raised up, and all these little boxes appeared with little handles that you would pull out boxes, and all these different things were in each box. There was a magnifying glass. There was all this stuff. You actually had to do a little puzzle at one point. You know, it was like a little investigate. Yeah, there's the puzzle. I mean, it was actually kind of fun. I mean, it's very touristy and very, you know, commercial or whatever, but it's actually, I mean, I don't know, maybe for somebody who's never been to a distillery before, that would be pretty fun, you know. It gets a little ticky-tacky after a while, but today's rain is tomorrow's whiskey, and it did rain while we were there for a little bit, which is always nice. Here's the mash tun at Clynelish, fairly large mash tun. This is their fermentation washback room. You can see they use wood. They probably have some stainless steel in the back. Actually, I can see it right there. There's some stainless steel in the back as well. A lot of distilleries use a combination of both. Some have switched over to just stainless steel, and some have stuck to wood.
Charles, what's that colorful thing?
The color.
Go back, sitting on top of the washback.
Oh, what was that?
Was this tasting notes, maybe?
I can't remember. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. Oh, here we go.
Was that a tasting map, or is that a?
Let me see if
We've been looking for floors. It looks like flooring samples.
Oh yeah, it says nutty, grassy, earthy, something else, tropical.
Yeah.
So those are all the flavor notes from Clynelish, basically.
Gotcha.
Okay. It's a very clean, new-looking room.
Well, everything there has been, you know, very much. Oh, I didn't realize somebody's waiting to get in the room. You know, it's all been rebranded, everything, you know, cleaned up. Same thing at Talisker, very much kind of, and we'll do Talisker in the next tasting, but same deal. You know, it's like part of this whole new Diageo experience. So there's the mash tun again. Actually, there was mash in there, which is pretty cool. I wanted one of those t-shirts with the cat on it. I should get that next time too. There's the washback.
I can see we're going to be making a detour.
Yes, we are making a detour. Yeah, so here's the stills. Here are the stills at Clynelish. It's kind of a mixture of line arm angles. So they're not all the same angles, which is interesting too. Fairly large. They all have the bulb in the middle, which is pretty cool.
The ones in the back are the low line, and the other are the.
I believe it was the other way around.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe the wash stills were in the back and the spirit stills were in the front.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was. saying, but
Yeah.
backwards. Okay.
Yeah. So those are a little bit bigger in the back. You can
Mm.
see they're a little bit taller at the top of the bulb.
So you get more reflux in the
Yeah, with the
on the
bulb.
second. Okay.
Those are the condensers on the right here. You can see they're shell and tube condensers. There's the still. Another angle. All right, so there's Clynelish. I'm gonna.
Wine. Okay, I got it backwards. That's what I meant, but not.
This is really good.
Yep.
Mhm.
Shalom, had you opened yours yet?
No, because I knew we were tasting this one tonight.
Okay. Because we didn't taste this at the distillery.
No, I know. I really like it. I gave it a pretty big score.
Yeah, me too. It's really amazing.
Definitely oily, sticks to the glass.
The palate is very buttery.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty tasty. This reminds me a lot of wow. It's actually got like this almost like a candied sweet tart note on my tongue right now. It's like this.
I got anise. It was almost like there was some licorice on the palate and finish.
Yep.
I get the sweetness at the back of the palate on the finish. It
I'm getting
really
some like right
lingers.
in the middle of my tongue right now on the top.
Nice to it, but it's great. Fantastic. I didn't want to finish that, but I did.
Even Dennis liked Clynelish.
It doesn't suck.
Doesn't suck. You did all right with Scapa too, right? You like Scapa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Dennis doesn't like peat. Or I mean, he's warming up to it, but on a very slight level, very low level. But you know, there were a couple of instances where he was like, that didn't suck, and there was some peat. There was a little bit of peat there. So, you know, there's time, Dennis. We have ways. We will
It
eventually.
happened to me. I started out hating peat. Now I'm all over it and I'm going to Isla. So it happens.
Jeff, we're on Clynelish, if you can hear me. We're wrapping up Clynelish. All right, let me I'm gonna wait on that last sip. I'm not gonna finish it.
Yeah, I tried. I couldn't control myself. Good.
Okay, so these next three distilleries are all they're actually all distilleries that we did not go to on this trip, but two of them happen to be in proximity, so that's why I included them. I was trying to include three in proximity until I goofed on one of them, but I don't know what I was thinking, because I think we actually have whiskey in the shop from that distillery too, which is bumming me out. But we're going to move on. I'm going to show you the map again here. Let's see. Why does it do that? There we go. Hold on. All right, here's the map again. All right, so we were just in Brora, which is right here again, right on the coast. And if we work our way down the coast, we have a couple of really cool stops. One of them is Dornoch, which is this number 29, right where the arrow is. You guys can see the arrow, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So 29 is Dornoch. Dornoch is a really beautiful little town that we actually spent a night in Dornoch. It is also home to the Thompson brothers. which is an independent bottler, but they're also running a distillery called the Dornoch Distillery. We didn't actually get to visit, but the independent bottlings that they do, if you've ever had or heard of Thompson Brothers, they're not in the US, but they are amazing. You know, some independent bottlers you taste and you're like, okay, they found a cask, cool. Thompson Brothers, really, really great. Everything I've had so far has been really fantastic. So they're in Dornoch. And then if you go right down from Dornoch, number 38, which is near the town of Tain, that's where Glenmorangie is. So a lot of people know Glenmorangie. Actually going to be there in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to seeing the new still house that they have there as well. But just to the west of Glenmorangie and Tain is number 20, which is Balblair. And that's where we're going next, is Balblair. This is a Blackadder Balblair. Now these Blackadders, these are raw cask Blackadders. So, you know, basically they're taking the whiskey right out of the barrel and including a little bit of sediment in there as well. Some of you might have some of that in your glass. Some of you might not. Holly's was making fun of me here recently. I actually, when we get so far down on these Blackadder bottles, it gets so hard to get the whiskey out without it being a glass full of char. I actually had to use, for myself, you guys were all lucky, I used a coffee filter so that I could taste or get at least a dram of this Balblair out of the bottle, which was...
Yours is chill filtered.
It's not chill filtered. It's not chill filtered. It is coffee. For me alone, it's coffee filtered. But when I was looking at this bottle earlier today, it was black, and there was no way I was going to get anything out of it that was drinkable. And so I was able to use a coffee filter and make it look a little bit more palatable. But so this is a Blackadder. I'll read about the bottle first when we can taste this while we talk about the distillery. This is a 10-year-old Balblair distilled in 2012. This was matured in an Oloroso sherry cask. Cask strength. This is 57.8%. Only 280 bottles of this available. And this came into the shop recently and sold out very quickly. I was just happy to grab a bottle. We actually had a delivery, I think a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And one of these bottles was in the delivery by mistake. And one of the bottles we were hoping to get was not in that delivery, but we kept this Balblair as well, just because as soon as we get it, it's usually gone. So I'm glad we're all able to taste this.
How much was it when you had it in the shop?
It was not cheap. It was, good question, Shalom. I believe, let me see if I can figure that out. I know it was probably around $150 or so. Let me see if I can do this real quick.
Wow, this got some toffee and butterscotch on the nose. Hell, it's got some liquor.
So this was $154.99 in the shop. So not cheap for a 10-year-old cask strength, but it's Blackadder, which goes for a premium to begin with because it's Blackadder, and it's Balblair. I mean, you don't find a lot of Balblair out in the wild with independent bottlers. Wow.
You mentioned, it's funny you mentioned coffee because I get butterscotch in the nose, but I definitely get some coffee on the palate.
Oh,
Well, yeah,
absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to read a little bit about Balblair. Some of you heard of Balblair before. When I go back here shortly, I'm going to try and get a cool bottle of Balblair, and we're going to use that as the opening whiskey for the next segment of our tasting for those of you who join next month. I have only been once, and it was just to the tasting room visitor center, and it was a very quick quick stop. So I'm looking forward to going with this group coming up here shortly. Even though they're doing some construction now, so there will be a couple areas we won't be able to see, but I think we'll see most of it. So Balblair is located in Edgerton. It was founded in 1790, very old. It was rebuilt in 1895 on the Inverness and Ross-shire Railway line. Always an important thing where distilleries are located, that they're close to some form of transportation. Let's see here. However, okay, so interesting. I didn't realize this. So it was founded in 1790. It was rebuilt in 1895 to be closer to the railway station. However, so good was the original water source that the rebuilt distillery chose to ignore a nearby burn in favor of the original water source. So they still, to this day, they continue to use the original water source, which is quite interesting when they have another water source nearby. John Ross ran the business until 1824. It was in the family for a long time, until 1970 when they sold it to Hiram Walker. And then in 1996, it was purchased by Inverhouse. And the other distilleries with Inverhouse are Glenlivet, Knockdhu, Old Pulteney, and Balmenach. So they're part of that group. It is one of the oldest, it has one of the oldest archives in distilling. The first ledger entry is from 1800. That's pretty cool. John Ross himself penned that first entry, which read, "Sale to David Kirkcaldy at Ardmore, 1 gallon of whiskey at 1.0 quid, 1.80 quid." Balblair used to release their whiskey by vintage, but in April of 2019, they started to release a core range of age statements. This includes the 12, 15, 18, and a 25 year. We don't see a lot of that. I haven't at least seen a lot of that. I've always remembered the age, the age statement whiskeys, which basically, or their vintage aged whiskeys, which would literally tell you the year it was distilled on the bottle, and you could kind of figure out how old they were. And the math was, like Holly mentioned, everybody hated doing that math. I kind of liked it, but I'm nerdy that way. And then some of you seen the movie The Angel's Share. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. But it was in The Angel's Share. And after that movie came out, Balblair had such a influx of visitors, which is kind of interesting, that they opened their visitor center, which was in the former malting house. So that's Balblair. Pretty beautiful small distillery. Let's see if I can do a quick. There's a really classic kind of look. Let me just pull up an image here. Yeah, I mean, it's just a beautiful, smaller distillery. These are just some images here that you can see. This is probably the most classic one here, right here. This is kind of the entrance to their visitor center. This is their parking lot. When you come in, you see the old still topped off there. Pretty cool little spot. I'm looking forward to visiting for sure, checking them out. So tasting notes, tastes like a fig Newton I dropped in the soil of my garden. Yeah, okay, I get that.
Yeah, it's got this fruity quality, but also I get a little licorice, but the toffee is coming out, butterscotch, molasses.
I get butterscotch on the nose and the finish. I get coffee on the palate, and I also get the fig. Jeff's tasting notes are great.
Yeah.
Now, I know not everybody is a sherry a sherry enthusiast. I mean, most people like sherry, but I'm just curious, are there any people that don't like this because it's too much sherry? Okay, it's pretty quiet. I hear crickets.
Beth Ann raised her hand. You have to look at the.
Yeah,
Oh,
Beth
somebody
Ann
raised their
her
hand?
Yeah, nobody knows Beth Ann raising
I
her
did
hand.
not like this one, but I typically do not like these, like when it's just really raisiny to me and it's like a thick, I don't know. I didn't,
It's too much.
yeah, it's too much. It is, yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I asked the question, because when I taste it, I could see how this is too much. I mean, I don't mind sherry whiskeys, and I know, you know, we enjoy all whiskey, especially in the shop, but sometimes, you know, you can't taste any of the actual distillate when you're in a first fill sherry barrel. I mean, I don't mind the Abelauer Abunad. I love that. I think it's a great whiskey, and it's high alcohol and very beautiful. And you know, we've had plenty of sherry bombs over the years. But if, I mean, I don't know if you had, and this is a good question, if you had 5 sherry bombs next to each other in a tasting, would you actually be able to taste the distillate or differences in the distillate of those sherry bombs? You know,
Challenge accepted.
Sounds like a blind tasting, Charles.
I didn't think
I
this
was
was.
gonna say,
now
if you
what
make
would be
one-third the
interesting?
calendar, if you
Yeah.
make 1/3 the calendar
Sounds
sherry bombs, maybe we'll all have a chance.
Well, I
Sounds
mean,
like the first 17 at you know, the advent calendar.
what would be interesting though is if you could find 5 Oloroso sherry bombs next to each other, not like one PX, you know, have it all be the same type of barrel exactly.
I mean, this wasn't as raisiny. I mean, I mean, some of the PX ones are much more raisiny than this.
Yeah, well, PX, I think in general gets more of that. I don't know. I get a little bit more of that.
I do appreciate the dried fruits, the figs or the raisins. I do like that profile in the whiskey, but I like sherry bombs.
We did that at Gordon's. It was back when you could get everything sub 100. It was Aberlour Abuna, Tamdu batch strength, Glengoyne cask strength, Glenfarclas. What was it? 105? What was the Glenfarclas?
Yeah, Glenfarclas 105 was at 60%.
And and it was a Glendronach. Anyways, it was all blind, and Tamdu came out on top, which
That's
everyone went mad. Yeah,
I like that. That's cool.
yeah. So it can be done, but those bottles are much harder to find now. That was when they were all 89.99.
Yeah.
You know, 5-6 years ago, but
I do have to say I really like this one though. This to me isn't too much. I don't know. There's something about it that still works. But I understand you, Beth Ann, even though you're the calendar winner and all these good things, you know.
Twice in a row, no less.
Listen, I've already been yelled at not to say anything about the calendar tonight.
I love that it's his name on there only now. Or sorry, her name on there only now.
That's because I know my place, Lucas.
All right, so we're gonna go to the Mistake Distillery. I kind of goofed this one up. So let me share my screen again with the map. We were driving down from Balblair and we went through Invergordon, and I saw the sign, and for whatever reason, I've always thought Invergordon was a lowland distillery. I don't know why. I just don't know the map as well as I do now. But we even turned off at Invergordon, I think to get gas or something. And I saw there was a sign that pointed to the distillery. I was like, wow, I'm so backwards when it comes to my geography on Invergordon. I thought all grain whiskey, you know, was down in the south. So when I was yeah, White McKay. So when I was thinking of this tasting, I remember we got the Blackadder Inchgower, and the eye just kind of stood out. And for some reason, I mixed Invergordon with Inchgower in my mind. I have no idea why. Maybe I was jet lagged. I have no idea. But Inchgower is way over here. So at least we're not right in the space side. But so some of you can see Bucky on the coasts right here on the northern part of this part of the Highlands. Well, Inchgower is number 100, just to the left, to the west of Bucky. So, I mean, at least we're on the water. We're not too far away from where our journey was, but I goofed. Invergordon and Inchgower are not that close to each other. Definitely a good 4-hour or 3-hour, probably, no, maybe 2-hour drive. So not too far, but so we are doing an Inchgower. Sorry about that, everybody. We will head back to the journey of the Scotland adventure here on number 5 and 6. But you know, again, great great Blackadder comes into the shop. We got to try it, right? So this one, I'll talk about the whiskey first, and then I'll read about the distillery. But this is a 12-year-old from 2009, Inchgower. Cash strength again, 287 bottles, 58% ABV. And by the color, you can tell that this is a hogshead. Oh, even it says it on there. This is a hogshead. So let's see if the Inchgower is decent, at least as a mistake.
How much was this bottle?
Let me find out. Actually, I think we still have this one too.
Got butter on the nose.
Let me go take a peek. I think we might have it. No, we have the Macduff. We don't have the Inchgower. Let me see how much the Inchgower was.
I always ask these questions so I can put them in whiskey points.
Yeah, no, I know, Shalom. All right, it was $135.99, so cheaper than the Balblair, 2 years older than the Balblair, but cheaper than the Balblair. Oh, wow. That's got a beautiful nose. Talk about butter.
Yep.
Yeah. There's also some kind of spice that I can't quite put my finger on.
Oh, wow. So now this reminds me more of a space side. Maybe it's because we're closer to the space side, but definitely has that citrus note on it.
Yep.
It's got some of that sourness too.
I get a white pepper, a spice.
Ooh, yeah, lemon lime yogurt. That's like the perfect nose on this. With some butteriness to it too. So briny, huh? Some whiskey writers.
Yeah, I definitely get the coast on this one.
That's Dave Broom's like Inchgower's claim to fame is its coastal qualities, which is interesting because there's so many coastal distilleries that don't show any coastal qualities.
Well, you know, I mean, and this is what you learn when you go to distilleries and visit them. You know, we have all of these distilleries that we love, and we think, oh, it must be because the warehouse is right on the water and it's taking in all of this influence from, you know, you talk about Talisker and you think, oh, it's the perfect oyster whiskey. It's all matured like down near Glasgow. You know, like they don't have maturation in the location of, you know, some of these places. So, you know, some of the distilleries, yes, they're good about that and aging it right on the water and taking in a lot of that. And then you have some of these larger companies now that you know, they just don't have the space to do that anymore. Maybe they did it back in the day. But you know, it's kind of a sad lost art in a way, I think, a little bit, that some of these places aren't aging their whiskeys. I mean, is Highland Park being matured all on Orkney? You know, I mean, similar question, right? All right, let's talk about Inchgower. Outskirts of Bucky, built in 1871 to replace the Tocquenille Distillery, which I don't know anything about. And let's see here. It was transferred to Arthur Bell and Sons in 1938. And indeed, to this very day, the Bell's logo is used in the advertising of Inchgower. The current operator of Inchgower is Diageo. So at least we're staying a little bit in the Diageo world. And since 1966, they've operated with 4 stills. But the distillations of Inchgower contribute to Bell's blended whiskey, which is probably what they're most known for. It's classified as a lower Speyside malt, which I don't understand why that is. It takes its water from a burn rising in the hills to the south of Bucky. Any idea, Holly, why they would call that a lower Speyside malt?
Because it's where the Speyside dumps into the ocean.
Okay, that makes sense. And
Or
it
I
is,
was thinking they might, where's that from? Who wrote that?
the classification.
Yeah,
It's from scotchwhiskey.com.
because sometimes they'll classify the blending malts in classes like
Okay.
not quality, but ability to blend.
Okay.
I don't know if they're talking about, they might be locale, but it might also be kind of like where it's used in blends.
Yeah.
The Blair Athol is the main component of Bell's, I think.
Inchgower.
Inchgower is the main.
I don't know if it's the main, but it's what they're making. I think most of what they're making is going into Bell's.
Okay. I thought Blair Athol was a major component.
No, well, Blair Athol is Diageo. Oh yeah, no, Blair Athol's not Diageo.
It's not. I thought the map said so.
No, Blair Athol is.
They're probably both a major component because neither are distillery released, Peter.
Well,
So
wait, but Balblair is
Diageo.
Diageo though.
Yeah, I mean, but they're probably both major components.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
of blends. Yeah.
because they're both small distilleries.
Right. Here's a picture of the stills at Inchgower. So you can see their condensers are right in the middle, which is pretty interesting. You don't see that too often. Usually condensers are off by the wall or even on the other side of the wall.
I don't know if this is because we're following Balblair, but this is very light and fresh, and like I think someone said lemon on the palate. But no finish.
No finish?
I think it's quick.
Yeah. I called it a medium finish. I didn't score the finish that high.
That nose is amazing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smell that all day.
I mean, it's you know, that's the amazing thing about whiskey is just how different these all can be, right? I mean, this is so different from anything we've had previous in this tasting.
Well, what's interesting to me is the palate's very different from the nose. I got like butter and pears on the nose and citrus on the palate.
Yeah. So the qualities, Holly, that we're getting on the nose, that kind of butterscotch, lemon lime yogurt, is that a hogshead like thing? I mean, do you think that
I think that's more of the distillate. I think the
distillate?
hogshead is contributing to the finish
Okay,
everyone's talking about. Because it still has some youth, being at 12 years old. So
yeah,
maybe it was a pretty tired cask that let it shine through as a, pear and citrus, and the oak didn't overtake, but yeah, I think it's a little bit of the distillate and probably some tired wood, which I like. Tired wood.
well, I think it was a pretty tasty mistake.
I like it.
I'll make up with it with a Balblair in the next tasting. But all right, so let's move on to Macduff.
Macduff is really light in color.
To tell you the truth, I don't know exactly where Macduff is. Let me pull it up here.
This is my old brand, Charles. Do you want me to do the
I would love
Macduff?
for you to do it, sure. Well, let me talk about the
Devon.
whiskey. I'll talk about the whiskey first and show where it is on the map. Oh, this is even further away from our
Yeah.
Scotland adventure. Who came up with this idea?
It's in keeping with the previous one.
I should have
Inchgower.
checked
Guys get
this
lost on
map
your trip.
before we released it.
Well, okay. All right, let's talk about this. So this tasting, I'm changing the demographic of this tasting. This tasting is distilleries around this body of water. How about that?
There you go.
North Sea whiskeys.
North Sea whiskey, part 1, North Sea whiskeys. There we go. Thank you, Shalom. All right, so we're now heading over to Banff. We're going the other way. Oh, geez. I thought Macduff was over here too. That shows you how far away I am from my. We're over here, number 50.
Isn't your handle whiskey traveling?
Well, I've never been to these distilleries yet.
We are going to Kentucky for the bourbon trip next month, right?
No, we're going to Tennessee.
Fearless leader.
Where is
Tennessee.
Blackadder located?
Yeah, where's Blackadder? That must be its own island somewhere. All right, so Macduff is even further away from our journey. This one we still have in the shop. I think just one bottle. This is a 14-year. This is also a hogshead. This was distilled in 2007. Only 126 bottles. So very, very limited release. 59.7%. So a little bit higher in alcohol as well. All right, Holly, go for it. This is your deal. Oh, did she run?
No, I was
Oh.
going back on YouTube. It's this goes into the blend William Lawson's, which is not available in the US. I guess it's pretty big in Africa and actually in Russia. But if you Google YouTube William Lawson's advertisements, you'll see some really raunchy advertising with men in kilts. So just was going to put the YouTube links
Here,
to all of
I'll do
Charles
it
can
right
look it up. That's pretty terrible. But it has 3 names. It's Macduff Distillery, which in independent bottlings you'll see Macduff. And it's in the US, but they're pulling it back now. It's called the Devon. It was in that sea glass bottle, that blue seagrass bottle. There was a 12, 18, that was it. And then in travel retail, it's called Glendevron. So it has 3 names, all different bottles. So they're a little confused in the marketing department, but it's from the 1960s wave. So that wave of distilleries when blended Scotch, kind of Mad Men era, was huge, and they wanted lots of different styles of whiskey to go into those blends. So it was
Oh,
built in the
geez, this
60s.
is horrible, Holly.
I don't think you can play this.
It's hilarious. They're all pretty bad.
Which one should I play? This is
I
like,
don't know. I think there is nudity in some of them, so maybe you shouldn't play it.
No
The laws
rules,
are
something
different.
in Cannonball.
She thinks like she's never
Maybe
seen
you
it.
should wait till the recording's off.
Look it up on your own time.
Okay. I still think No Rules, Great Scotch Cannonball sounds interesting. But
Yeah, so Macduff is it's had ups and downs, because obviously right after the 60s, then it became a rough time in the 80s and 90s. But it's very modern in that it has horizontal. They planned for this distillery to be massive, and they built these horizontal condensers. So usually we see the shell and tube side by side paired up vertical with the pot still. They built them horizontally to save space so that they could continue to build, and then never did. And again, it's kind of still up for debate, but Dave Broom equates it as being kind of the in-between of a worm tub and a shell and tube, because you don't have the pressure of gravity. It's still pushing through a smaller surface area, copper surface area, but it's not necessarily being as much force. So when we went to visit the distillery, it's not open to the public. You could tell they didn't want us to be there. It was very rushed. They were rushing our US team through, but it's known for this kind of old red apple quality to it. It's a lot of apples, not crisp, bright green apples. It's kind of your old, almost time to throw out red apple is kind of the tasting note that it's known for. And usually you get apples on Macduff.
I'm not sure I'm getting apples on this one though.
I got oily vanilla on the palate, on the nose. The palate is kind of missing. I got oil and vanilla on the nose and a kind of a flat palate.
I get that butter again on the nose.
There's definitely stone fruit. I mean, I get more pear on this one than the last one, but
Yeah, chocolate and mint.
It's
I-
pepper.
well, actually, we get chocolate.
And mint.
Yes, lots of chocolate and mint.
I mean, this one, it does remind me a lot of the Deveron in general. Like, I mean, I remember tasting those frosty bottles. This is right there with it. I mean, cash strength, obviously, but
It's mild peppery finish, but it this
That's true.
very
Yep.
quickly.
Pepper and mint.
Mint, yeah.
That could be.
I'm enjoying this one actually a lot.
Yes.
not as heavy as I expected.
Light, I was expecting.
Different, yeah.
With the ABV, I figured this was gonna really punch, but it doesn't.
This is probably even a little bit more floral coastal than the Inchgower.
So they're a young distillery.
I'm enjoying the palate better than the nose. The nose is a little flat for me.
They're only 60 years old.
Short.
Can you visit them, Holly, or are they closed to the public?
They're closed to the public. It's a beautiful location though. It's kind of up like Port Soy, which is a cute little coastal village that northeastern section of Scotland has a lot of cute little fishing villages, and it's right in there.
Now, are they discontinuing in the US?
Yeah, they're pulling it back out. I guess it's William Lawson's is growing, so they need it for that blend. But Glendeveron, apparently they have younger ones, 10 and I think an 8, but it's very, very popular in Italy.
Oh,
I guess Italy tends to like not lighter, but fresher whiskey, like younger, kind of bright, fresh whiskey. And I guess that's become their top market. So they're pulling it back out of the US.
Italians should stick to wine. They know nothing about whiskey.
But this
like a Peroni.
I did
travel retail.
I tried Italian whiskey when I was in Scotland this last trip for the first time. It was actually not bad.
All right.
Yeah. It was
You
Puni.
can still find it in travel retail, and it's, I mean, I get it, it's 40%, but ABV, but it's you can get the 16-year-old for $90. I mean, it's still one of the best priced travel retail brands out there right now.
I always enjoyed the regular core Deveron. I thought that was really underappreciated. I think it's a tough, I mean, you know, just from representing it, I mean, how hard it is even in the city to get that to grow. I mean, imagine up here, you know, just the fact that Nine Maple had it was amazing, I thought. Just not many bars would carry. I mean, the bottle, it helped with the color and the kind of coolness of the sea glass, but still a tough brand to launch. So kudos for you for working on that.
I didn't really work that hard on Glendeveron, but thanks, Charles.
Well, I mean, I learned about it because of you. So
I wasn't really supposed to, not that I wasn't supposed to talk about it, but they were like, yeah, they didn't really care about the brand because it's such a small production. It's Aberfeldy and Craigellachie are kind of the gems of that crown. So anytime I talked about Altmore, I just did it because I like to try all the different whiskeys. But Glendeveron and Royal Brockla were kind of the afterthoughts of that portfolio, unfortunately.
well, it's too bad. They make good whiskey. So
Absolutely.
all right, so we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna actually head back up to Orkney.
Yeah, and back on the real route. But
Sorry.
Holly, for the Royal Brackla and the Glendeveron, you said they're afterthoughts, but they keep them for the blending, or what does that mean?
Yeah, they're not large distilleries. So they go into blends. Royal Brockla, Aberfeldy's the core, but Royal Brockla, a lot of it goes into Dewars still to this day. But they did rebrand Royal Brockla and raise the ABV. That's a great name. You know, from a marketing perspective, Royal Brockla has a better shot than Glendeveron, you know, or Macduff, because you've got the Royal Warrant. But so I think they're going to try and come back with Royal Brockla, but yeah, there's so many distilleries, as we know from independent bottlers, that you can't build them all up. So you kind of pick and choose based off of flavor profile and, you know, brand story and also just regionally, you know, for instance, the Macduff was doing better in Italy and in European markets, and they don't have a lot of it. So they decided, instead of spread thin, just focus on a few key markets and just pull it out of so Aberfeldy and Craigellachie are the focus for the US market now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're heading back to Orkney for our last dram of the night. So let's see. How about, I'm going to talk about the distillery quick. We don't need to go into too much detail. I'll talk about the distillery and the whiskey, and then I'll show you the video and stuff. But we're going back to Highland Park. You know, truly the one distillery on Orkney that most people have heard about. Famous around the world. One really, really interesting thing that changed just the last 4 years since I was there before. They have completely gone away from the Viking heritage. When we were there in 2019, it was all about Vikings. It was all of the non-age statement releases that were coming out all had Viking names. There was all this stuff, and they were talking about their heritage, and which was great. I love it. I'm part Viking. I was all into it. I was like, this is me. But we went this last time, and there was not a peep about Vikings. I was like, what is going on? Like, what, I mean, I don't know why they're pushing away from the Viking heritage.
Well, but they did the first one we tried was the Triskelion, which is a Viking thing.
Well, that was the only thing, though. I mean,
Right.
last time, I mean, it was like literally, we are Vikings, and you are not. And yeah, so the first whiskey that we tasted when we were at the distillery was a really great whiskey, probably the most special whiskey of the whole tour, to tell you the truth. It was a collaboration bottle that they made with all of the employees and master distillers and people that worked at the distillery, and they pulled off a really great bottle. So here we're watching their movie at the beginning of the tour, and we're tasting a really, really great Highland Park. And then everything after that was truly just core range stuff. So it was kind of a little surprising, but
that was a peated whiskey that Dennis said wasn't awful.
Yeah, that was actually one.
Dennis, did you buy a bottle? You really liked it.
No, Steve did. That I really liked.
Yeah, that was a great one. All right, so we'll talk about Highland Park real quick. Where are all the people? Streets look empty. Yeah, this is kind of a little bit outskirts of Kirkwall. It's still in Kirkwall, but just up the hill. So they were founded a long time ago as well. Illicit distilling was their beginning in 1798. Magnus Junson, who was a butcher and a church officer by day and an illicit distiller by night, was caught in 1798. In 1826, nearly 30 years later, Highland Park received its first official license to distill whiskey. The name of the distillery does not refer to the Scottish Highlands, but rather to the fact that the distillery was founded on an area called High Park, which it is up on a hill. In February of 2023, Highland Park released a 54-year-old whiskey to celebrate their 225th anniversary. And they did talk about that. And they talked about whether or not they were going to release a 60-year-old whiskey in 2029. So we'll see what happens with that, but for 2028. So they use local peat. So we are going back to a peated whiskey, which we haven't had actually tonight. It is a different type of peat, though. They're using a local peat to Orkney, which contains a lot of the plants and vegetation that happen in Orkney, which is quite a bit of heather. So it's a lighter peat. It's not your Band-Aid peat that you get on Isla. This is more of a lighter floral peat. They do use a lot of sherry casks, whether it's American or European oak, mostly Oloroso. This bottle that we're having tonight, this is a distillery exclusive single cask, only 621 bottles, which again, if you think of an Oloroso sherry butt, that's going to be about that many bottles, very big barrel. This is 13 years old. This is 64.7% ABV. So not cheap, or I mean, not low in proof. It was very expensive, actually. This bottle was over $200. I'd have to look at my notes to see the exact price, Shalom. But it was up there in price. But we all know Highland Park. They've been around a long time. Their 12, 15, are pretty common. You'll see the 18 around. The 18 is really fantastic. We did taste that while we were at the distillery. But they go all the way up, 21, 25, 30, 40, 50-year-old Highland Parks. Very sought after around the world. They definitely made a name for themselves. So I have not tasted this one yet. I'm going to share some photos and videos of Highland Park. So this is the street that leads up to the distillery. They were nice enough to pick us up in a van down at the cathedral down in Kirkwall, and then take us up to the distillery. This is kind of the famous Highland Park entrance gates. It's very Harry Potter-ish when you go in. It's almost like straight out of the movie. We'll wait for this video to. But everything's old brick. Right here is the actual malting, or to the right is the malting facility, which we did go into. This is where they do their own floor malting. They were not in production at the time we were there. In the middle of the summer is when they close for repairing, for refurbishing, for also taking vacation. But this is where all of the malted barley would be, the germinating barley would be on this floor. This is one
Now,
of.
did they say they all their peated whiskey is malted there, and then they import some of the unpeated grain?
Yeah, so it's a combination. Highland Park's not 100% peated whiskey, and that's also another reason why it's lighter in peat. And yes, all of the peated is done right here in the in that area there. So here's the kiln area. This is the peat right here that they use. Let's see, this is a video kind of show you. So 10 hours of peat. And this is their kiln. That's where the peat would go. The malting floor would be upstairs. Here's the instructions. Pretty cool. Fan cover to be kept open at all times. Bottom fire doors to be kept closed. Air to be regulated. You have to think about it. It's live fire. You don't want there to be a fire in the distillery.
Has anyone been to a peating facility while they were peating? The
Oh
malt?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
How does that smell?
Oh, it's
Peaty.
great. Actually, when we were on, and hopefully when we go in June, when we were on Isla in 2017, Rob was doing angel, what's it called? Snow
No,
angel,
barley angels.
barley angels in peated malt at the time.
Oh, that's heaven.
He was doing that at Beaumont, and when we were in downtown Port Ellen, Lefroy was steaming away or smoking away, and the air, you could just smell it in the air down there.
Yeah.
Rob didn't spend the night in jail.
No.
No, they aired them out instead.
So here's the.
Charles, they did it in the Men in Kilt show too. They were rolling around in the mall.
Yeah.
I think there were two things we're confusing. There's the malting floor, where they spread the grain and moisten it and turn it.
Yeah.
And they put it in the kiln to
Right.
actually smoke it with the
Right.
peat.
So the
So the
malting floor-
enclosed part is
Yeah.
smoking.
Right. Yeah. So the malting floor is just to be used to turn the grain when it's germinating. And then when you want to kill the grain
Put it in the mold.
germinating anymore, you move it to the kiln, which is above the fire. So
And when we were at Lefroy, it was going, because they have a sign when you walk in the distillery. It says, "Welcome to Lefroy, get Petey punch in the face."
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
really, really big mash tun. Huge compared to a lot of the other distilleries that we visited. This sucker is really, really big. And it's right next to the washbacks. And then you had, that was the mill. kind of going backwards. And then this is the still house. So really big stills. They don't have the bulb. So Highland Park is not that, it's not super oily, you know, or thick. You know, it's meaty, but it's not Macduff, or it's not, you know, some of these other Clynelish. It doesn't have that thickness to it. You know, if you even look at this whiskey that we're having right now, it doesn't stick to the glass like the Clynelish did. It does stick, but not, it comes right off pretty quick. I mean, that's also the high alcohol too. 64% is pretty high.
This is the dram of the night.
No question.
Yeah. That's the spirit safe down there. And that's actually where they, you know, will make the cuts and change it from, you know, heads, hearts, and tails. And then this is their warehouse. I don't know what that's all about, but that was on one of the barrels.
Probably the Angel taking a share.
Yeah, actually, I think that's what it was. That's the Angel taking her share. Now, obviously, they don't mature all their whiskey there. They make a lot of whiskey. I mean, you saw the size of the mash tun and the stills. They just don't have the capability of storing all those barrels up in Orkney. We did go into a tasting room, which was pretty nice.
Did you acquire a club barrel while you were there?
No.
One thing to note is what people need to wear in the middle of the summer on Orkney.
Yeah.
Long sleeve sweaters.
Yeah. You know what though? It's perfect. It's 60 degrees. You're not sweating. You can take off your jacket when you're too warm, and you're just fine, you know. All right, so that's the slideshow. I'll go back to
Actually, when I'm looking at that.
Well, this is part
what do you
one.
guys think of this one? Some people say it's the dram of the night. I'm curious, do you get the peat? How much peat are you getting on this?
Like,
Medium, gentle peat.
Really gentle.
It's very, the thing that gets me, I mean, it's the same thing I noticed in a lot of Highland Parks. It's just very balanced, except for the Highland Park that I brought back, the PX cask, which is just all raisins. But this is, I like the balance on this. It's just, everything kind of blends, molds together nicely. And it,
So what, when you're comparing this to the bottle you brought back, in terms of scoring and just enjoyment, what do you think?
you know, I scored them both about the same,
Okay.
but they're just very different. The one I brought back is a dessert dram. I mean, it was also 65% alcohol and very smooth, but it was just like all raisins. Whereas this, I'm getting more flowers and a little bit more of the peat. The peat is really diminished in the one I brought back. And I'm getting some, you know, a little bit of brine, a little bit of dried fruits, but they're not as prominent as in the one that I.
How old was that one?
13.
Also 13.
Wait, no, 12.
12.
It was 12 years all in a first fill PX.
Wow.
If I was going to introduce anyone to a peated whiskey, this is where I would start.
With a 64.7%.
It doesn't taste 64.7% though.
Taste that way. Very lightly peated. I mean, you can actually, it's dangerous.
By the way, this guy in my background here, we met him when Charles and I went for a walk one evening in Kirkwall.
Yeah.
That's Darkless.
yeah, Holly made a really good point. I mean, this compared to the Scapa, they're not far from each other, but talk
Very
about
different.
difference. You know, I mean, that's what's so awesome about doing this. You know, when you go down and Quaid, no, you're going to have a blast. Trust me, when we go to Kentucky. But when you're in Kentucky drinking bourbon, it tastes really great, but the nuances are not anywhere as close to how different these can be. You know, that's what makes, I think, Scotch just so much fun, and malted whiskey in general. I mean, this is not comparable to anything.
For nuance, bring them to the Brazilian beer bar.
Yeah, that's right. No, we have plenty. We have really some great activities scheduled, so I'm not worried about it. But you know, bourbon's delicious. There's no question about it. But it's not as different as Scotch can be from each other.
Scotch is the king. I mean,
well, no. We're not saying that either.
No, but no, I mean, it's got a certain. Well, it's different. You know, it's got a refinement. It's got a. It's got some delicateness. You know, the bourbon is. You know, it's just a different. It's like comparing apples to oranges. I'm trying to get my wife used to Scotch before we go to Ireland, and I was actually proud. She actually drank some Talisker.
Nice.
And kept it down.
Thumbs down.
She kept it down.
Oh, she kept it down.
Yeah.
Maybe verging on too much information. I'm not sure.
Oh, so just a little bit, and she didn't spit it out. So
okay.
Yeah. But
hey, Charles.
Just to follow up on my previous comment on the weather, that behind us on the picture is Anne in 2018.
Oh yeah.
And just addressed appropriately. So
yes. What month was that?
I think it was July of 2018.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But late July.
What were you going to say, Dennis?
Well, there was two things. One, I agree with him. The weather was just perfect for us. I loved it. The second thing was he was talking about Talisker. Now, I did buy a bottle of Talisker, and it's just got that light touch of peat, and I really enjoy it.
I love Talisker. It is great.
Well, so our next segment, if people are interested in joining again, we're going to head a little further south. We're actually going to start hopefully with Balblair. We'll see what happens when I go to the distillery here shortly. Hopefully we can find something cool. But we're going to head a little south. We are going to do Talisker, and we're going to do Ardnamurchan. Those are going to be kind of the three main distilleries that we're going to focus on. Ardnamurchan is just hands down amazing. And then the last segment of this Scotland adventure is going to go down to Oban and then Campbelltown and kind of finish with Glen Scotia and Campbelltown, a little bit of Springbank stuff. But yeah, so lots to come. I'm actually looking at I'm looking at some Ardnamurchan bottlings from SMWS as well to include. I love tasting these single cask Ardnamurchans. They're really amazing. And it's so impossible to get anything here in the States. We are getting a new Ardnamurchan in tomorrow, so maybe I'll include that too. We'll see. They're actually here in the US right now, and we're a little bummed that they're not here in upstate New York. But it is what it is. Someday we'll get these people to come to First Fill first, and then they can do then they can do the rest of their journey when they're done with First Fill. But we'll keep working on that. How about that? So, any favorites from tonight? Just curious, what was your favorite from tonight?
Talisker and Clynelish by far.
Talisker. We didn't do Talisker.
Or Highland Park. Sorry.
All right, Highland Park and Clynelish. Anybody else?
Highland Park and Balblair.
For me, it has to be the Scapa and Clynelish. I'm just a total Scapa groupie.
All right.
Like the Clynelish and the Inchgower.
Nice. All right. The mistake whiskey.
We're going with Scapa and Clynelish.
All right.
because
Scapa
we
finally-
both have bottles.
Nice.
Charles, Todd asked you a question in the chat and he wanted to know when number 2 might be,
Oh.
and I would like to know 2 and 3 if you have any idea.
Well, I think number 2 is going to be October 11th.
We're around? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then I'm probably doing a Henry Street tap room tasting on the 18th. And then there might be on October 4th a non-Scotch tasting of some sorts. Because I know there's not everybody's into Scotch, so I have to keep that in mind as well. Unfortunately, for the rest of September, there's not going to be any more club tastings. Between my trip and we have a Rascal and Thorn dinner on the 27th. I'm not going to be able to host anything. So it'll be October, and it could be 2 in October, plus Henry Street. So, and then in November, I really don't know at this point. I'm waiting on Henry Street to give me an answer on when I'm doing a tasting with them. And then to finally, in December, I know we have the calendar, but not everybody does the calendar. So I am doing a special Bruichladdich tasting in December as well. So
Yay.
just keep that in mind. I brought back an Octomore Farm bottling this last time, and I have 3 Octomores from last year that need to be tasted. And we have another special Scotch Malt Whiskey Society Bruichladdich as well. So yeah, there will be a little bit of break in the calendar at some point for that. But
We just released a new Octomore.
everybody good? I'm going to stop the recording. Any more questions or anything?
Yeah, Charles, I had a quick question for you. Did you, sorry to go back to the Highland Park, did you know what that was aged in? Because it just seemed much darker than the Scapa.
I'm going to guess it's Oloroso sherry. I'm not sure if it's American or European oak, but it's definitely going to be a sherry barrel. I mean, it's very dark, you know.
Yeah, and there was something paired up with that peat that just like really hit like 5-star for me, and I couldn't pick out what it was, because it wasn't the peat, but it was with it, and I was just like, just amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Holly says maybe American oak because of its brightness. Yeah, I mean, I love
but sherry seasoned American oak.
Peat goes really well with sweet.
Charles?
Yep.
Just one thing from Steve and I. Thank you to you and Shalom. You kept us out of trouble. And Shalom is awfully good.
Thank you guys. No, it was a pleasure. And we'll see you guys again. So, all right, I'm going to stop the recording.